Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, and today we're going to do an early preview of UFC Des Moines, Cory Sandhagen versus Deiveson Figueiredo. And my friends, it's going on this Saturday night live at the Wells Fargo Arena in Des Moines, Iowa. So, guys, as you already know, later on this week, on Wednesday, I'm going to have a guest. We're going to break down the whole card, start to finish, but I figured I'd give you all a little early look, a little early preview right here, right now on Half the Battle. And then after I do this little preview, I'm going to recap this past weekend's UFC Kansas City card with the Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates fight. Of course, the man, Malcolm Wellmaker, with an emphatic debut. We're going to get into all of that. So without further ado, let's get down to business. So UFC Des Moines, it's going on this Saturday night live at the Wells Fargo Arena, and you got Deiveson Figueiredo taking on Cory Sandhagen in the main event. So this one's interesting because I feel like we've been waiting for so long for Cory Sandhagen to have that breakthrough performance, man. I mean, he's always been so talented. People have been touting this guy as a future champion since he made his UFC debut. And I don't want to say that Cory Sandhagen chokes in big fights, but he just hasn't gotten over that hump. He hasn't won the big fight to get him to that next level yet. But it's like he's clearly a top 5 guy. What's it going to take for Cory Sandhagen to get his title shot, you know? And I also kind of feel like Cory Sandhagen, one of the things that made him great was the incredible output. We used to call this guy the output king, and he used to be so creative, take tons of risks. And I feel like Cory Sandhagen's gotten really risk averse last few fights, you know, ever since that Rob Font fight, which was a horrendous fight. First of all, to all my friends in Nashville, I'm really sorry that y'all had to experience that as your main event. I know firsthand because, you know, Nashville is only a 4-hour drive from me from Atlanta, and I considered going to that event because my buddy Cody Durden was fighting Jake Hadley that night. And I remember watching that Rob Font versus Cory Sandhagen fight thinking, thank God I didn't go, because the whole place has the right to not just boo, but if they would have started throwing tomatoes into the octagon, I wouldn't have been mad. I mean, that was literally when you just lay on someone for 5 straight rounds, like no punches are thrown, no kicks, no nothing. You're just laying on the guy, not even attempting to posture up and do damage, not attempting subs. Yeah. And then after that, Umar schooled him. And I just haven't seen that same umph that I used to see from Sanhagen. But on the other side with Deiveson Figueiredo, obviously a legendary fighter, but he's kind of on the older side now. You know, he's approaching 40 years old. And I was glad that he moved up from flyweight to bantamweight because he was always a massive flyweight. I mean, hence this guy missing weight in title fights, right? That's how big of a flyweight he was. But now that he's getting older, like, it's good for him to move up to 35s. And, you know, now you can hit the Brazilian steakhouse a little bit, my man. But listen, Deiveson's a legendary fighter. He's got big power, opportunistic finishing ability, but the minutes are for sure going to be won by Cory Sandhagen. It's just a matter of, can Deiveson land that big takedown, land that big shot, guillotine, something along the way to change the course of the fight? That's the big question for me, because I do think that if we're just looking at minutes, Cory Sandhagen is going to probably, you know, be touching and moving and stuff like that, scoring points, right? But it's a matter of, does Deiveson have a couple big explosions in him that could potentially change the rounds, change the fights, or even get a finish along the way? That's the big question. But yeah, I agree with Sanhagen being favored here. It's just how much do you want to trust Sanhagen? You know, that's my big thing with him. And also on the card in the co-main event, you got Bo Nickel taking on RDR, Rainer de Ridder. So the fans already know that part of the Fade Kevin Holland World Tour, we took 2 units on Rainer de Ridder at plus money against Kevin Holland earlier this year at UFC 311. Shout out the band 311. But now it's a completely different matchup against Bo Nickel, because unlike Kevin Holland, Bo Nickel is what, a 3-time D1 All-American or something like that, and insane grappling credentials, very, very talented everywhere. You know, this guy, for only, you know, for having an extensive wrestling background, this guy's got some hands too. And I think that there's a big misconception of that last fight he had with Paul Craig. You know, I know exactly why the fans are booing. Trust me, you know, because for me, I'm going to the Atlanta event, June 14th, right? And I'll tell you all this. The only thing I want to see, if I'm paying money for tickets, is blood. I don't want to see anything else. I don't want to see anyone fighting technical. I don't want to see, you know, point fighting. I don't want to see any of that. I want to see blood. I want to see guts. I want to see people getting knocked the you-know-what out. So I completely understand why the fans were booing Bo Nickel in that Paul Craig fight, because if you're at the arena, you want to see blood. It was kind of boring. But looking at it from a making money perspective, Bo Nickel did really well in that fight. I mean, 30-27 times 3. I felt like it was a very smart game plan because you got to understand with Paul Craig, when guys try to take him down, they usually get subbed, or he pulls guard and subs guys, or he takes them down. Now, just to put it in perspective, Paul Craig blast doubled the current UFC light heavyweight champion, Ankalaev. He also finished him via triangle. He also finished the former champion, Jamal Hill. He also finished Nikita Krylov. He also finished Kennedy Nzechukwu. So, man, Paul Craig's a very opportunistic finisher, and Bo Nickel didn't give this guy any opportunities to get into his wheelhouse whatsoever. Picked him apart on the feet. And credit to Paul Craig eating some of those shots, man, because those were some knockout blows. But you guys got to remember, Paul Craig's a former 205 where he was coming down to 85s. He's going to be the bigger man in that spot. Now here, Rainer de Ritter, another guy who used to fight at heavyweight. He used to fight at 205. He's a big boy too, but he's kind of goofy on the feet. Where it's really at with him is on the mat. You know, he's got a variety of submissions, inverted triangles, all kinds of crazy stuff. You know, the 2 subs he's had in the UFC against Gerald Meerschaert and Kevin Holland, 2 guys that are very tough to submit. But I would be shocked if he submitted Bo Nickel. I really would, man. The only thing to be concerned about is the MMA experience or lack thereof from Bo Nickel. Besides that, this seems like a really good matchup for him. And this is the lowest price you've ever had on Bo Nickel before. So when Wednesday comes through and it's time to do my real breakdown, we'll see where the price is. And you might be looking at me moving in on that spot. Let's see what happens. So the featured bout in the welterweight division features Santiago Ponzanibio and Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod. That's a great fight. You know, 2 guys, 2 bangers that are kind of towards the end of their career. Both guys reaching 40 years old. And historically speaking, Pons is actually the better guy. You know, Pons is the one who was 1 fight away from a title shot at one point. Like, he was scheduled to fight Usman, and then he had the health scare. It was really unfortunate. And Daniel Rodriguez, he had a big win streak in the UFC too. But, you know, I think he kind of was a bit of a late bloomer, came to the UFC kind of on the older side. And, you know, as a result, didn't get to have that long of a prime. Now he's kind of declining already. But that being said, I think D-Rod's the more durable guy, but Pons is the tougher guy. So yeah, you got to kind of draw your conclusions from there. Like, I could see D-Rod wobbling Ponzanibio. But the thing about it is, if Pons starts putting that pressure on D-Rod, I'm not sure how D-Rod's going to respond. So that's a very good fight as well. And then also on the card, we got, oh man, this is probably my favorite fight on the whole card. We got a bantamweight showdown between Montel Jackson and Daniel Marcos. And interestingly enough, right now they got it Montel minus 205, Daniel Marcos plus 175. So anytime you see a plus 175 next to Daniel Marcos, I know that could be tempting for a lot of people. But this kid, Montel Jackson, he's someone that came to the UFC and really made an impression early on. You know, he's got such physical attributes, and a lot of people, myself included, have been waiting for Montel Jackson to finally put it together, and the kid could potentially make a title run. And it just hasn't happened yet. But again, it could be because he doesn't fight that often. But when he does fight, he makes an impression. And yeah, but the thing about Daniel Marcos is he's very, very technically sound. He's good everywhere. He's a smart fighter. A lot of IQ from Daniel Marcos. So I'm a big fan of his. And it could be a dog or pass situation, but it could also be first L time for Daniel Marcos. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. And then another bout I really like in the bantamweight division is Sahiti, you know, the half Canadian, half Ukrainian fighter, taking on Cameron Smotherman, the kid that just recently upset Jake Hadley. And, you know, they got Sahiti minus 145, plus 125 on Smotherman. Yeah, it's an interesting fight because, you know, when you talk about bantamweight prospects, it's funny because, like, last week, you know, my boy Malcolm Wellmaker made his UFC debut, and I was telling y'all, like, hey, guys, this is a future star that you need to look out for. Malcolm's special. But then I get these 2 guys, Sahiti, you know, he's 1-1 in the UFC. Cameron Smotherman's 1-0 in the UFC. It's like, how good do I really think these guys are? Well, I think Malcolm would knock both these guys, the you-know-what, out easily. So I don't think they're on that level. But I think Sahiti, you know, he's tall for the weight class, 5'11". He likes to fight, flying knees, volume. He's exciting, but he's a bit on the hittable side. And Smotherman, he's only got hands. He's got nothing else but hands. I know he choked out, you know, some very, very low-level opponents on his regional scene, but, you know, you'll rarely see kicks from Smotherman. You'll rarely see takedowns. You'll only really see him throwing hands, and he's got some clean hands. So this is a good matchup. And then I'm really looking forward to this lightweight fight between Jeremy Stephens and Mason Jones. You know, Jeremy Stephens, a legend in the game, has got knockouts over Josh Emmett, RDA. And it's funny because I've seen Jeremy Stephens fight live twice. You know, back in the day, I saw him fight live at UFC 136 against Anthony Pettis in a sold-out arena, right? And that fight went to a split decision. Now, I saw him fight again many years later, and it also went to a split, but it was a completely different scenario, right? So I just mentioned how I saw him fight Anthony Pettis in a sold-out arena, right? Then I also saw him fight this random Irish jobber named Miles Price for the PFL in a youth basketball gymnasium. And Jeremy Stephens won a split there. But, man, it's just clearly not the same guy. But let me say this. So after his last MMA fight against Natan Schulte, Jeremy Stephens went into bare knuckle boxing, and there's been a big physique transformation. In other words, what I'm saying is that Jeremy Stephens has been harvesting the garden of life, fruits and vegetables. And now this fight here is in Des Moines, which, you know, Jeremy Stephens is from Des Moines, Iowa. Is he going to get a little therapeutic use exemption in this fight Saturday night? But here's the thing with this kid, Mason Jones. He already had a UFC stint, and he did really well as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he beat David Onama. He beat Alan Patrick, but he lost to Mike Davis in an incredible fight, and then he lost to Ludovic Klein. And the Ludovic Klein fight was a very bad performance from Mason Jones, but something you got to understand is that's high-level competition, A, and B, Mason Jones was in his early 20s, so he goes back to the Cage Warrior scene. I really like what I've seen since then. He's made a lot of improvements. He's still, you know, at heart, the same old brawler he used to be, but I feel like he shored up some of the defensive liabilities that he used to have. And he's added this nasty spinning kick to his arsenal. So don't be surprised if you see Mason Jones come out here and spinning head kick KO Jeremy Stephens in Iowa. Now, Yana Santos and Misha Tate are fighting. You know, I was surprised both of them aren't retired, but, you know, props to these ladies because I saw Misha Tate fight. Like, how old was I when she was in Strikeforce? Let's pull this up, man. Like, when I remember seeing her fight Julie Kedzie in Strikeforce, where she got dropped with a head kick and then she comes back and wins that fight. Let me look it up. How long ago was that? So that Julie Kedzie fight, man, 2012, guys. I've been watching Misha Tate fight like 13 years, y'all. And then Yana Santos, I remember when she used to be called or named Yana Kunitskaya, and she won that Invicta belt, armbarring Tanya Evinger, but there was like a little ref error, so they overturned it. She had to give the belt back. It was really unfortunate. And yeah, she just hasn't really quite put it together in the UFC yet, but she's a lot younger than Tate, but Tate's a lot tougher. That's a tough one. So Azamat Bekoyev's coming back against Ryan Loder. Listen, Azamat Bekoyev had a very impressive UFC debut against Zach Reese. You know, he knocked him unconscious in devastating fashion. My issue with Bekoyev is if you watch his regional fights, he's a bit of a gasser when fights get extended. And then Loder, very good D1 wrestling background. He actually has a win over a good prospect named Lawan Davis, who was doing his thing in the NFC scene, you know, back in the day. But Ryan Loder hasn't fought since that Robert Valentine fight. I wonder what he's been up to. I know he's like a coach for Team Alpha Male, so yeah, maybe he's been coaching. This is an interesting fight because Azamat Bekoyev, his strength is his wrestling, but Ryan Loder is a former D1 wrestler, but Bekoyev has more than twice the MMA experience. So yeah, interesting fight. Marina Rodriguez and Jillian. Yeah, listen, guys, a few years ago, I think that Marina would have been a live dog here because the difference on the feet is night and day. But you know what else is night and day? The difference on the ground. Jillian Robertson has the most finishes and submissions in women's MMA history. And one thing about Marina is she just never evolved the takedown defense. She never evolved her get-up game. Look, her submission defense is good, but like it's like life alert. Help, I've fallen and can't get back up. I think this could be a situation where Jillian could either A, one takedown and the fight's over shortly after, or B, 3 takedowns and she doesn't get back up and you win a unanimous decision. So yeah, you got to go Jillian there. Gaston Bolaños and Quang Bang Lee. I just see these as 2 future victims from Malcolm Wellmaker, you know, so may the best man win there. Dontel Mays and Thomas Peterson. I remember when Dontel Mays was told by Snoop Dogg on Contender Series that he wasn't invited to the gang fight, and for him to be in the UFC this many years later, hey, props to Dontel Mays. You're still in the show, my guy. And Thomas Peterson, you know, he's just another average heavyweight, kind of more gravitated towards the wrestling side of things, but just average, nothing special. Should be a fun fight or not. And then Juliana Miller taking on Ivana Petrovic to kick off the card. Not often you see 3-on-3 fighters in the UFC, but Juliana Miller, she did win a season of The Ultimate Fighter, and she's a tough chick once she gets on top, right? On top, she's nasty, really good jiu-jitsu, but her stand-up needs a lot of work. And it's not the kind of thing where you just hit pads for 6 months and all of a sudden you're going to be ready to compete at the UFC level. She might not ever be ready to stand up at the UFC level because, some of these girls have been striking their whole lives, right? Like she's got a lot of ground to cover. But Ivana Petrovic, one thing I do know about her, obviously we all know she's very, very good looking, but man, she's a tough chick as well. A lot of people thought that she probably should have won that last fight against Jamie Lynn Horth. And had that been the case, she'd be on a 2-fight win streak now. And this is a big step down in competition for her, but just don't let Juliana Miller get on top of you, and you probably win this fight. So, yeah. Now, let's recap UFC Kansas City. So, at UFC Kansas City, Ian Machado Gary went out there and decisioned Carlos Prates. Now, the first 3 rounds, Ian Garry looked great. He was really picking apart Carlos Prates. Carlos looked terrible the first 3 rounds. I was like, well, what is going on? I bet Carlos Prates plus 110 there. I thought we had a really good shot. The first 3 rounds, I was like, oh my God, this is bad. But then in that 4th round, Ian started to slow down and Carlos started to pick it up a little bit. And Carlos kind of got that 4th round. Then in the 5th round, Carlos Prates almost killed Ian Garry. It was like one hammer fist away from the guy being out cold, a couple follow-up shots, and you get that knockout win. So what's interesting about that was going into the fight, I was downplaying the cigarette narrative. I was saying, like, guys, this is one of these guys, Carlos Prates, that comes from that background in Thailand where like the style and the culture over there is these guys smoke cigarettes, right? And part of me was right. Part of what I said was right. This guy did go 5 rounds and he won the 4th and 5th round. So by that token, I'm right. He can go 5 rounds. However, where I was wrong was, man, I feel like the difference between him finishing that fight in the 5th round and losing a decision might have actually been the cigarettes. Like if he just had a tad bit more energy to let it go in those last couple seconds, we could be looking at Carlos Prates on an even bigger win streak right now. We could be looking at Carlos Prates as a top 5 guy right now. We could be looking at Carlos Prates at possibly skipping the line and getting a title shot. But he just had to smoke that pack of Marlboro Reds. And as a result, he didn't have enough in the tank. When both men were completely fatigued, he had Ian Garry on death's doorstep, a couple more follow-ups. You win that fight, you secure a title shot, and he just didn't have it. So it's unfortunate. Hey, for a cigarette smoker to do as good as you did, wow. But if you really want to break into the top 5, I think he's got to make some lifestyle changes, man. And this fight showed it that, hey, you can be as talented as Carlos Prates is. He's so talented. The fact that he fought as well as he did, like in the later rounds, he got to a 48-47, almost got to a draw. They call that 5th round a 10-8. Like, wow. Now imagine if he like stops partying for a little bit. Maybe this kid can make a run. So yeah, he's going to definitely watch that last round over and over and regret it for a very long time. And for Ian Garry, the first 3 rounds were impressive, but man, just barely hanging on. Hang on for dear life in that 5th round. That's not the kind of stuff we want to see for title shots. So now I think if Buckley beats Usman, he skips Ian Garry in the line, So yeah, but it was a great fight to watch. So Zhang Mingyang retired Anthony Smith. I think it went exactly how people expected. A lot of points were being made about how, well, Anthony Smith hasn't been finished in the 1st round in X amount of years. And it's like, so he could get finished in the 2nd or 3rd round, but Zhang Mingyang went ahead and finished him in the 1st. So props to him. Let's see what they do with him next. I think he deserves a step up in competition. And then David Onama beat Giga Chikadze, and it kind of went as expected, kind of sketchy moments on the feet in the early going because, David Onama does have some defensive liabilities. But as soon as David Onama was able to get on top of Giga, Giga ain't getting up from bottom. And then Giga gassed out, which he's known for. And David Onama won the unanimous decision. So, yeah, maybe Onama and Ige next. That sounds like a good one to me. And then, man, I have no idea what happened in the Abus Magomedov and Michel Pereira fight. From Michel Pereira's perspective, when I'm looking at the stats, it says he threw 73 significant strikes. He landed 73. I don't know about all that. I didn't even think he threw a punch that fight, man. Listen, like you could see Michel's face when he did the little dance in the walkout. that he was not all there. His energy was completely off. Like, he's not even smiling while he's doing his dance. And then when it came time to fight, that was not the Michel Pereira that I'm used to. You know, the guy that goes out there and takes big risks, the guy that jumps off the cage, the guy that does backflips, the guy that's having the time of his life when he's fighting. That's not the guy I saw in there. So either the fluffy fight broke him, or maybe he was sick, injured. I have no idea, but he needs to go back to the drawing board and figure things out, because I want to see Michel Pereira enjoy fighting again, because when he enjoys fighting, he's a true pleasure to watch. And Abus, I mean, basically what I think about Abus is good job. That was a solid workman-like performance, but you beat like a compromised opponent who wasn't really there. No, I don't want to downplay Abus's performance. He did his job. You move up the ladder. Let's see what you do next. I just don't want people to overblow his performance and act like, wow, Abus has turned the corner. He's a title contender now. No, that was more about what Michel did wrong than what Abus did right, in my opinion, not to discredit Abus at all. So Randy Brown comes out here, cashes a 5-unit risk for me against Nick Dalby, but it was not without a sweat, as you know, as Randy Brown fights tend to be. You know, if you're betting a Randy Brown and fight and you're not sweating, you know, you're doing it wrong, man. I mean, it builds character betting on Randy Brown. So he goes out there, he's using his length advantage nicely, he's picking him apart, and then he gets dropped in round 1. I was like, oh my God, Randy. But then he gets back to it in round 2, really dictating the pace, establishing, just using that stick, that long jab, man, and eventually sets up a home for that right hand and, you know, face plants Dalby out cold, man. So yeah, I liked it a lot. I wish that Randy Brown got on the mic and called out Jeff Neal, because I think that's a good fight for Randy in the top 15. And on Tuesday, I want to see Randy ranked. It is time to get Randy Brown ranked, man. I mean, I think he's a top 15 talent, straight up. I really do. And yeah, let's see Randy Brown mix it up with Jeff Neal next. That'd be a great fight. And if they want to maybe do one fight outside the rankings, one fight I've always wanted to see, because both these guys came to the UFC young, and for whatever reason, the rankings have kind of like, what about Randy Brown and Jake Matthews? Does that not seem like a good matchup? Seems like one to me. So either Randy Brown versus Jeff Neal if you move him to the rankings, or Randy Brown versus Jake Matthews for a shot at the rankings. So Ikram Aliskerov made easy work of Andre Muniz. I mean, yeah, man, listen, that's exactly what he was supposed to do. Did Andre even shoot in this fight? Let me look it up. He shot once, one little half-hearted takedown, didn't get it. And then he was forced to stand with Ikram, and Ikram did his thing and put him down. So Matt Schnell and Jimmy Flick, yeah, they look like two guys in the retirement home. That was an ugly fight. Hey, shout out Evan Elder and Gage Young, man. I felt like those two went out there and put on a scrap, man. Like, that was a good fight. I can't wait to see both these guys come back, because they're both young, they're both green, they're both developing, but they're both hungry. They both want this. They both come to fight. So yeah, shout out Evan Elder and Gage Young. I enjoyed that fight thoroughly, and I can't wait to see what's next for both of them. And then Chris Gutierrez and John Castaneda, typical Chris Gutierrez fight, you know, big first round, dropped him in the first. You get that first round. Second round, a little closer, but Gutierrez kind of pulled ahead, you know, kind of edged out that second round, and then Gutierrez lost the third round. That's 29-28 Gutierrez. He got the split decision. I'm shocked a judge had 2 rounds for John Castaneda. Actually, I'm not shocked with the state of judging, but yeah, I had a 2-1 Gutierrez there. And then Damon Blackshear, he put a clinic on Alatong Haley, man. And he looks like a rising contender in the division, Damon Blackshear does. So I was happy for him, you know, to go out there with no takedowns and to put on a 3-round striking clinic, land over 100 significant strikes when you're known as primarily being a grappler. Hey, big performance by Damon Blackshear. The biggest performance of the night. You already know what time it was, man. Malcolm the Machine Wellmaker introducing himself as a potential future star in the UFC. He goes out there against the more experienced Cameron Simon, who's a young, hungry kid, and Malcolm destroyed him. Malcolm launched him. Malcolm literally sent this kid flying. Like, right when I think I've seen it all from Malcolm, you know, he face plants guys, he does all kinds of things, gets the most insane reactions. And I've been seeing his knockouts since he was an amateur kickboxer. This is the first time I've ever seen him, you know, send someone into liftoff, man. I thought that Cameron Simon was about to literally go to space. He got launched, dude. Like, he literally went airborne. Like, let's zoom in on his feet. Like, the dude was up in the air. Damn, Malcolm Wellmaker hit so hard. And what's crazy is if you watch his Contender Series knockout, he did that from orthodox, like a pull right counter. Dude, his knockout against Cameron Simon was from southpaw, and it was a lead right hook. So, like, he can throw that right hand as a straight right from orthodox, or he can throw it as a check hook from southpaw. My God. And now Malcolm Wellmaker knows he belongs. Now he knows that that power is going to translate at the UFC level. So the rest of the bantamweight division is absolutely screwed. I mean, when you think about it, like, who's the best bantamweight prospect right now? Like, I'm talking about non-ranked. You know, I'm not talking about guys like Lock Dog, who's like, you know, 2 fights away from contention. I'm talking about non-ranked. It's obviously Malcolm Wellmaker. Like, what do you think would happen if you put Sahiti, Cameron Smotherman, Garrett Armfield, Damon Blackshear, even Alatong Haley? What do you think happens if you put any of these guys in front of Malcolm? I'll tell you what happens. They all get buried. You're looking at the top prospect in the bantamweight division, and he comes right out of Georgia. Augusta, Georgia, to be specific. So welcome to the UFC, Malcolm Wellmaker. It's amazing to see, and I can't wait to see him matched up at UFC Atlanta, June 14th. Who do y'all want to see Malcolm Wellmaker fight June 14th in Atlanta, Georgia? Are we thinking a road to UFC guy? Are we thinking a Gaston Bolaños type guy? Like, what are we thinking, you know? Who should he knock out in Atlanta, Georgia? Let me know down below in the comments. And shout out to Jacqueline Amarim. That was a beautiful performance that she had against Poliana Viana. Man, the way that she just passes guards like a knife through butter, the way she gets zero resistance on her takedown attempts. She was so smooth out there, man. She's nasty. And I keep saying that fight against Sam Hughes was the best thing to ever happen to her, and I stand by that. So it's time for Jacqueline Amarim to take a step up in competition, because I think she might be a future contender for sure. And then I cashed on Timmy Kawamba against Roberto Romero. You know, it was the classic case of Roberto Romero. He had one moment of success against Onama, and now he's a favorite in a UFC fight. It just reminds me of like the Steve Erceg situation, where Erceg has one moment against Pantoja. Oh, now people are betting him against Kai Kara France and Moreno. It's like, relax. You got to put context on things, you know, because David Onama is very hittable early. And that's kind of what it was. And then after that, he put a clinic on Romero. And Timmy Kawamba, man, you know, this kid's been paying his dues. He's been fighting tough guys in the UFC. The results didn't go his way early, but now he finally got to step down in competition. And you saw the big difference in skill set. I hope they give Roberto Romero one more fight so I can fade him. I know that's mean, but that's just the truth. This is a mean business. And Timmy Kawamba, props to you, kid. You're 26 years old. And I can't wait to see what he does next. And then Jocelyn Edwards just smoked Chelsea Chandler. I was proud of both ladies for making bantamweight. You know, both of them have had issues making 35s in the past. And I was asking the fans, you know, does the featherweight division still exist? No one knows. So good, good on both of them making weight at 35s. They both look good physically, but Jocelyn looked real good fighting wise. I mean, she just went out there and destroyed Chelsea Chandler. And that's what you call paying your dues. That's what you call a culmination of hard work, giving you that kind of result in one night. So very, very good job by Jocelyn Edwards there. So this Wednesday, my friends, I'm going to be live on Half the Battle Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time, with a very, very special guest to break down UFC Iowa, UFC Des Moines in depth like we always do. So make sure y'all catch me. Tap in Wednesday live at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I'm curious if y'all can guess my guess. It's a first-time guest. I've never had this guy on before, but he's made a name for himself with his MMA gambling content, so I thought it was only fitting that he joins me on Half the Battle Wednesday night. So I look forward to that. And make sure y'all follow me on Twitter at Best Fight Picks, on Twitter as well at Half the Battle HQ, on TikTok at Half the Battle Podcast, on Instagram at Half the Battle Pod, and here on YouTube, Half the Battle Official. So grateful. Leave me a comment, smash the like, share if you feel so inclined, and then make sure y'all follow my boy Malcolm Wellmaker at Wall of the Machine. Show him some support, because right now he still hasn't blown up to the level he's going to, right? Like right now, like we're still, it's still like that slow ascension. Just wait till you see what happens when he knocks someone out in Atlanta. It's going to be like, whew. So y'all better get on board the Malcolm Wellmaker train right now. It's time. It's not too late, guys. So hop on that train now. Get on there. But yeah, thank y'all very, very much for all your support. I was grateful for the amount of listeners I had last week on that episode with Kunith, and let's just keep it up. And let's do our best this week. So I'll see y'all Wednesday. I look forward to it. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.